Got. I realize we're staying busy when I look at our list of things to discuss. I don't like to dominate the first 10 minutes, but good problem to have. We got a lot of things going on, and again, I'll run through a few quick updates and get any questions that you have. I did have a phone call. We've been asked a couple times. This falls in the department of something that really the city doesn't have any control over, but I do really look at the duty of this position as the ability to try to have a positive impact on things, even if it's not 100% in the city's control. I had a call with our local postmaster about the downtown post office on Thursday, this past Thursday, and that we are going to reach out to the real estate folks at USPS that are in charge of these types of relocations, and that to let them know really that we're willing to be helpful. We think there's a real value here of having a downtown location. What I will tell you is that there are some reports out there because, of course, they notify people with P.O. boxes that they'd be moving to that East Hill location over off Davis. The indication that they've given me, that is not necessarily, I would not presume that means that is their plan in concrete moving forward, that they would just move there in perpetuity. That has not been decided, but other than that, I've got to talk to the folks at the Postal Service that are in charge of the real estate side of things, and look at what their options are. So our local postmaster is going to connect me with the proper real estate folks, and really ultimately to say, let us be helpful to you. How are you looking for a building? Is there a certain location? Is there anything that the city can do to help make sure that whatever place is relocated, that we're able to have an opportunity, and also keep in mind a new location for them. It may not be that they need to have a truck be able, a loading dock. They may not need. Who knows what? I mean, they've been in that location so long. The current one on Palafox, they might have different needs, and I want to understand those and what those are, and make sure that again we can be as helpful as possible moving forward. So we aren't the landlord. We aren't the Postal Service. There's no clear direct line between the city's responsibility in this, but kind of like our issues with parking, some things are out of our control that I feel like I would regret just saying that's not our problem. So anyway, I'm going to reach out to the Postal Service and see if there's any way for us to be helpful to make sure that we do still have a downtown location that I really believe is a great value and a great amenity for especially our downtown businesses that frequent there quite often. Had a great meeting on also Thursday morning with Conservation Florida about Bay Bluffs Park. They are very excited about this idea. Obviously, this is our initial meeting, nothing formalized yet, but we are providing surveys and all of our property information of what the city owns along Scenic Highway to Conservation Florida, and I can't speak to what that will look like on their side, but I shared my desire to keep that in the public realm, to keep that in as public property, accessible property forever. And that's what they do for a living, and they're very excited about this idea. And where I can see this going down the road is that we conserve this property at the state level with a partnership with Conservation Florida, and that we go find funding with that partnership. And that was one of the big positives of a potential relationship between us and Conservation Florida, is that only bolsters our ability to go get funding for whatever the new iteration of Bay Bluffs Park would be. And whether that's primitive trails, whether that's, we don't know any of that yet, but I would say a very, very positive conversation, and I expect that to continue at this point. And so more to come on what that relationship would look like, and certainly as we start to formalize a partnership and they've done their review of all of that, there'll be more to come on that. So I could just say that the trajectory is very, very good for that conversation, and I appreciate them entertaining that, and I know they're very excited about it as well. Airport traffic report, we had more than 115,000 enplanements in September of 23. That's 16% higher than September of 22. So we continue to see, again, 1 million more passengers a year through these same 11 gates than we had 10 years ago. The numbers continue to support that. You guys in the media, I know we've heard, we hear complaints on the busy weekends about parking. We are hearing those. We are addressing those. We're in planning, not in planning. We're further along than that with additional 500 surface spaces, getting here as fast as we can. So we aren't ignoring that issue. But I think it just illustrates where we are as an airport, which is we got 3,000 more people a day going through the airport than we did 10 years ago. So, and we're just talking year over year. In September, we're up 16%. And if you take fiscal year enplanements, we're up 8.6% compared to this time last year. So those numbers, we keep breaking records, and it's that great problem to have. And that's why it's going to be when we have our legislative meeting on Thursday. Why it's going to be our number one ask is this airport terminal expansion, and that I don't think you'd find one citizen or one city employee or airport employee that would disagree that it's time for 5 new gates and to be able to start meeting some of the demand that we have. So in that vein, I wanted to give an update on, you guys are familiar with the airport modernization update. I just wanted to give a few different details of some of the things that are complete and in progress. As we all know, over the summer, we asked them to pause at one point, given the very inconvenient timing of the TSA checkpoint improvements. That those are complete. So those were completed in September. So if you go to the airport now, you'll see all the new equipment in there, and we do not have one of our lines is not down for improvement. All of that is completed. What's in progress now is parking garage maintenance. We're phasing shutdowns of the parking garage for resealing joints, just your typical maintenance that's happening to a structure of that age. The work will stop before Thanksgiving, and it'll start back up in January. So as we work on repairing and improving the parking garage, we obviously are aware of the seasonal aspect of that. So we continue to work on that now. We have had a couple of issues of coning off parking garage, and us then seeing people on video move the cones and then park in that lot anyway. We've had multiple issues with that. So in case a complaint is out there in the public realm that a car got friendly towed for free to another location and they can't find their car, if any reports of that come into you guys, there's more than likely a chance that we have them on video moving a cone to go into an area that was closed as a parking garage. So keep that in mind. Unfortunately, I hate for someone to get off a plane after a long way away and then have a little anxiety when they can't find the car where they're located. But we are trying to communicate as best we can if people were doing that and parking in areas that they weren't supposed to. That we have moved their car we have towed their car for free to another location where they're allowed to be parking. That hasn't helped limit. So we've had a couple little minor delays with some of these repairs because we've had people take traffic enforcement into their own hands. But that's been very minor, and we continue to move forward there. The escalator rebuild, we've rebuilt the first one. We're working on the second one, so we've got the new one now going up, and then you've seen that we're fixing the other, and that should be done before Thanksgiving as well. So that should be ready for the busier holiday season. New parking lot hardware, replacing gate arm mechanisms, license plate readers, improving credit card readers, adding pay by phone, and flooring on the jet bridge. And that's really for preventative maintenance. So those are 4 in progress improvements as part of our larger scale modernization. And any additional details you'll need, certainly we can get Ken or Matt to provide those for you. We have started looking at some data, and we'll talk about it a little more next week. Some data in terms of how much time we're spending at traffic crashes. You hear a lot of times nationally, we're no different, that the vast majority of our calls for service are usually traffic crashes, and where a lot of the taxpayers are paying for public safety, and a lot of time our public safety is out working crashes, whether they're fender benders, whether they're injuries, fatalities. And so in 2022, because of that, I kind of asked the question, what's the number? In 2022, our police spent 5,000 hours working traffic crashes. And that, by the way, is only the primary officer. So if a second or third officer showed up, which you can certainly assume in a lot of these cases that it wouldn't just be one officer showing up to a wreck, just the primary officer is 5,000 hours. So you can do the math, and we're talking in well over $100,000 a year that we're spending with our officers working traffic crashes. And I believe, traffic crashes at city intersections in 2022, 3,079. So you can do the math. That's about 8 or 9 traffic crashes a day that we're dealing with. So when you start these conversations that it was in our transition report about, do we look at red light cameras? These are some of the numbers that we're looking at, is how do we start to mitigate the huge labor expense that we're spending for people to be at these crashes. And so we'll have more data next week, but we have compiled, we actually tested about 17 intersections in the city over a 1-day period, just to see how often people were running red lights, how often they were, and the numbers ain't good, I can tell you that. We'll have those numbers for you next week, but it does not, you can see exactly why was recommended to me about red light cameras, especially at specific intersections. Not some are better than others, as you can imagine, but we'll provide that. We'll have maps and all of those other things next week. You guys have seen there's going to be a land development code amendment for building height, and there'll be a public hearing for the proposed amendment at the November 9th meeting. And then the second reading, if approved, will of course be in December. So we got one meeting in November, one in December. And ultimately, this is a similar tactic that we have right now. We have for density that is already on the books, that allows you to say, hey, if you're going to do something for the public good, maybe it's public access to the waterfront, you're going to build in a certain way, certain things that the city sees as valuable, we're able to bonus you density. Well, that density can't be bonused with verticality. So right now, if you were to be bonused, let's say you could do 175 units on a particular piece of property, we can bonus you more units in our current setup, but you can't go any taller, so to speak, if you are near that number. So it's the same mechanism that we're talking about here. It just would allow you height. And if you follow anything about urban infill and the cost of sprawl, there's cities all over the country that have the same population that they had in the 70s, except they have 49 times more fire hydrants. They have miles and miles more streets to maintain. So I'm just a big believer in, if we can create taxable value and we can create housing and we can create within the same footprint that we already have, that's a better deal for the taxpayer. And it helps us generate a revenue stream. So what we would be looking at here is the ability to go up to 150 feet of habitable space to understand, and we'll provide it. I know it'll be in the documentation for the council meeting, but we can provide the map for you. There are already this is not a new height. There are already areas within our downtown that can go this high. So this is not going to a new number, but it might be areas that are at 125 feet that can go to 150. It doesn't mean that everybody's going to go to 150. So I've talked to some council members that have had questions about it. And you also have to understand, it's a great problem to have if people are proposing 150-foot buildings. So before we decide that that's something that we do or that we don't want, I think the city should put itself in a position to be able to accept such a proposal so we can actually decide if it's good for the city or not. Sometimes you have conversations and you'd think that we've been turning down skyscrapers around here left and right. None of those have come across my desk in any formal way at this point. The question's been asked, of course, hey, could we add a floor or two, and we answer accordingly, but nothing of any substance has gotten to us that says I have to go 150 feet. It just would be nice for us to have that opportunity to add millions of dollars to the same soil, the same dirt, and help feed our largest revenue stream. And so I'm definitely in support of it, and certainly looking forward to the discussion with council and the public on some of the questions that they have. Jefferson Street parking garage, I said, if we were going to change anything with parking, we've got to do a better job of explaining what you get for the money. We have talked about one of those amenities, although we don't have transformational dollars. When it's 30 minutes free and 50 cents an hour, you don't have those transformational dollars at this point. But we are being pretty smart with what we do have, I think, and we are now getting north of 300,000. I was wrong. I was underestimated yesterday in the agenda conference. We're at $319,000 of either completed or in progress projects at Jefferson Street Garage. That's internal lights, landscaping, paint, signage. The big one and a lot of the big costs is security recommendations, cameras, all of those other things. So those are the types of things that we don't have a line item for in property tax, that we're taking a user fee of who uses that garage, and we're now turning around and reinvesting it back to make it a better experience. So even though we're proposing changes moving forward, that's an example of what we're talking about. Is we're saying, hey, we're going to reinvest your $300,000 that we wouldn't otherwise have if we weren't charging, and we now make this a better garage. I've never had a citizen come to me and say, I think you have sufficient money to replace infrastructure. No one said that. And also no one said, I think you should do a sweeping increase in tax to help offset Jefferson Street Garage. I think what makes the most sense is for a user fee to say, hey, if you are utilizing this, let's take the 50 cents an hour that you're giving us and let's reinvest that to make that a better experience. So, that we are allowing the people who use downtown the most to have the impact to make it a better place to park, a better place to visit, safer and more beautiful. So that's an example of what I definitely want to do moving forward as we start to consider some of those changes. Last couple things. Again, just a reminder, the monitor drop-off facility of recycling starts Saturday, November 4th. So not this coming Saturday, but the following. 7 a.m., 3 p.m., 2759 North Palafox Street. And we've been sending that information out, soda bottles, water bottles, on the PET plastic side, milk jugs, laundry detergent jugs, and then steel aluminum cans, as well as clean cardboard. Then we'll be taking all of those things, and we'll actually be tracking as we move forward. Our staff that's monitoring will be tracking what's coming in, how many tons, how contaminated it is. And so we'll be able to report that back. And once we have probably 3 or 4 Saturdays, we'll have enough of a sample size to report back to you how much we're getting, what we're getting, and what the contamination rate is. So we'll definitely follow up every week with that info. Last thing, there's a historic marker dedication on November 2nd for the city at Bayview Park, and it's a historic marker for the Battle Massacre of Bayou Tahar. For the 1818 Battle Massacre of Bayou Tahar, where 30 Muskogee women and children were killed by U.S. forces. And the historic marker the efforts were City of Pensacola, Escambia County, Santa Rosa Band of the Lower Muskogee, UWF Historic Trust, and the Florida Department of State. So I should have said that's 2 p.m. on Thursday, November 2nd, that we will have that event. So we'll be happy to have you guys there. That is it for my long opener, and happy to take any questions you have. Yep.
Mayor, Philip Oliveira's discussion at the agenda review yesterday, his recommendations seem to look beyond this whole issue of red versus green, the parking areas. And I noticed in his survey, that was the citizen survey, it was identified as, I think, 30-some%.
Yeah.
The citizens were confused.
Yes.
Do you think you collected the right data on that? And are you prepared to move beyond the blue-red conundrum as you go forward here?
Yeah, so first question, do we think the data is correct? We do. If you look at the mix of the 5,100 surveys, about 20% of those, so let's say 1,000, are city residents. But in this particular case, so 80% are not city residents, but that wasn't the question, because we want people from Gulf Breeze, Pensacola Beach, who comes and uses downtown. That's what we were looking for, someone who's familiar This should not be like the resident satisfaction survey should be city residents. But in this case, we wanted any kind of user. It could be a tourist that was filling this survey out and giving us their experience. So the fact of the matter is 31% of the people who took the survey thought we run the red lots, or we put purple and green, I believe, which we made up. And so many, that's a pretty significant portion of people that aren't aware of that. That's okay, but I think what that helps illustrate, and Philip mentioned this, is when the second complaint, the second highest ranked complaint, 28%, I believe it was 28%, is finding parking. That was the number one concern. Number two was 21% at cost. But I suppressed that number personally when I analyzed this data, because if 31% of people don't know that, think we run the red lots that are charging $4 or $5 an hour or more, then is that a true indicator? Are people really complaining about 50 cents an hour, or are they confused by the general downtown experience that also includes $4 and $5 an hour lots? And then that's closely followed by the experience of the parking app, which of course that's something that we'll probably address first, is the parking app. I believe that was 18%. So I think that the data is correct. And I said during the meeting, I'm extremely frustrated with this 2-app system. I think everyone is. Again, you put yourself in the position of our parking enforcement people, the mayor, the administration, and when you get the vast majority of your complaints or comments tagging you on Facebook is clearly about something. It's a photo of a ticket from a red lot, and city mayor, why are you doing this? That's frustrating. It's frustrating for them, and it's certainly frustrating for me. Is to get actions of which we have no responsibility are being dinged on our experience, and so that it's kind of what I said earlier about the post office. We can say, sorry, call UWF or call this lot owner or whatever, and not my problem. We can say that, but that would be a mistake, because we are allowing all of those people to go back to where they live, where and they get to say, don't go to Pensacola because I got my car booted. And can I say that's not my responsibility? So we've got to start. Why we're taking a holistic look is we've got to start figuring out a way to get away from this 2-app system. So we are not focused on private lots at this point. But what I will tell you is, if we were to get to a point where private lots were interested in some kind of solution that we might be able to provide, when that conversation comes, I would absolutely entertain it. And I think we are going to do right by the citizens and right by the tourists of this community that come and visit us, visit their families here, we cannot sit idly by anymore and just say that this is how it is. And we've done that for years, and it's long overdue that we figure something else out. And so I'm frustrated about it. I think a lot of citizens are frustrated about it, and we've got to figure out a solution. So we're not jumping the gun on that yet. I think we've got to get our house in order with our city spaces, our new app. What kind of changes do we want to make? And then certainly moving forward, that's something we would absolutely entertain.
A follow-up, if I may.
Yep.
This would be the third parking app
Mm-hmm.
the city's dealt with. Are you concerned about this, how it's rolled out, how it's, Philip's explanation was a good one, the
Yeah.
matrix that this app has all the benefits.
Yep.
But it would just seem to me, given some comments from some of the council members
Mm-hmm.
about certain demographics not being comfortable with the apps.
Yeah. So, yes, of course, it's unfortunate what's happened before, that we've bounced around on apps. I feel extremely confident moving forward about the app that was recommended, that I expect we would move forward with, is if it's not the largest parking app in the United States, I believe it is. I don't want to be misquoted as saying that, but I do know that they have 7.5 million Floridians already with the app on their phone. I think the next closest we were considering had 1 million, and they are in New York, they're in Boston, they're in New Orleans. This is an app that chances are, if you travel at any regularity outside of the city, you probably already have on your phone. And the technology enhancements are significantly better than what we have right now. It's not even close. So, yes, do I sympathize with another app change? Of course. Should that in my mind, foster inaction and that we stay with an app that's not as quality. No, I think we've got to go make what the best decision is for the city, and I think that's our first objective, and that's something that we're going to probably move on pretty quickly. It's a great question to ask. How do we make sure that with a new app that people know that it's there? We have not finalized an agreement with Park Mobile or any other app at this point, but because of your exact question, we have already started to have marketing meetings on our side to say whatever app it is that we would change to, that we have a concerted effort with not only the app itself, who is very accustomed to onboarding, coming to communities and helping onboard people with a new app, but we're talking about a lot of different potential tactics. We may not, how do we handle the first month in terms of writing tickets or warnings? How do we handle? There's a scenario out there where we could actually have both apps working for a short period of time, where if someone didn't know and they signed up on the Park Pensacola app, even though Park Mobile, we could have our enforcement people checking both, that kind of thing. So we are very mindful and meticulous about ensuring that we get the message out with an extreme change, like going to a completely new app. So I will promise you right now, we will not get it perfect. We will not get all 55,000 people and all millions of tourists that come here. I know that. I know that the change will cause a little bit of issue, but it will not be on a lack of us playing some offense and making sure that we spend at least 30 days, 6 weeks leading up to a change in app, as well as once that change happens, we'll have some baby steps towards. We are not going to just wake up one day and abruptly move to another app and no one will know about it. We will have as good an offensive plan in place as possible to roll out any kind of app change.
You're asking council to approve this proposal Thursday? Is that the idea?
No, actually this was just that the report had been completed, and it is a subject that affects all of us, right? In all 7 districts, this really wasn't necessarily an ask from parking. It was about parking in October. The plan would be the first thing that would have to come to council would be a change in price, because the price is outlined at 50 cents an hour in ordinance. That's it. So that would of course need to be changed by council and approved by council, as well as other things. If we were to, for example, if we ever wanted to take on enforcement in a lot that the city didn't own, as an example, that there's some ordinance things that would need to be cleaned up. So that's what's coming to them, not this week, but all we said was, hey, this report's complete. Instead of, we wanted to get it out into the public realm, and certainly any questions or concerns that they have. And so what we're doing now is evaluating Philip's recommendations, and then what we do, what we prioritize, and then how we sequence those. Even though he has a recommendation to that, that we asked him to make that independent recommendation, and then we'll try to see how we're going to prioritize it in terms of what we think makes the most sense for the city. But I can confidently say right now, phase 1 will be an app change. Before we get into policy changes, costs, new parking spaces, changing times, those kinds of things. Not saying those won't happen, but I think the first one in front of us would be an app change.
Mayor,
Yeah.
to piggyback off of that, with the changing rates going from I believe it'd be like 50 cents to $1 or something like that, would you be, I guess, eliminating a certain segment that might already find it hard to pay for that, and then increasing it?
Yeah.
Bringing it down.
So, a couple things on that. First, obviously that's what the recommendation is. We haven't finalized exactly what the proposed rate increase is. You saw the data in the report of how grossly undercharging we are compared to like-sized cities with like-sized incomes. My response to sometimes people have it opposite when they say, well, if we have someone that can't afford 50 cents an hour to come downtown and now it's $1 an hour, how does that impact them? My counter to that normally is, for the infrastructure that we don't have the revenue for to fix downtown, everyone's paying for that. All 55,000 people who live here, all 7 city council districts. If we've got to fix something, if we were paying for parking garage improvements and we didn't have parking revenue for it, everybody, including people who don't come downtown at all, are now footing the bill. So that's why I always ask that question. I say, do you think we have the sufficient amount of infrastructure dollars to repair and replace everything that we have? And of course, The answer is usually no. So the best way to try to combat that in the downtown area is to ask the people who use it most to help foot the bill for those costs, and not all 55,000 of us. So I really look at it the other way. People that are on fixed incomes, lower incomes, that we think that the difference between 50 cents an hour and $1 an hour, and by the way, the vast majority of our spaces, are free. So it's not as if, I think that gets a misnomer sometimes, that because we talked so much about paid parking, that's all that's available. There is plenty of free parking, and will be plenty of free parking in the city. It just may not be right in front of the restaurant or right in front of the store. But I look at it as, this now moves the obligation of expense. The obligation goes to the people who use it most. So if I'm down there 4 or 5 nights a week and I'm paying for parking, when I improve those spaces, when I improve the experience, when I get a new app, when I do those things that make it better, then I'm the one that gets the benefit, because I'm the one going downtown. So that's how I see it. Is I think you could actually make the case that we are adversely affecting folks on lower fixed incomes, because right now they are footing the bill for any changes that we have to fix downtown. And then people say, well, all you care about is downtown. You're using our tax dollars and you're only spending them downtown. This allows us to have a revenue stream that the people that are using downtown now are helping support those improvements. So that's the way I see it. I don't expect that we would have any adverse impact because of that.
And then just a couple other follow-ups
Yeah.
on that. First, we talked to some employees and stuff that work downtown that have to pay that fee, for 8 to 10 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything maybe in the future to help with them
Yeah.
specifically?
Yeah, so a couple things on that. One, another complaint I got about a red lot in an email, or I forget, social media or whatever, was, look how much my daughter has to pay to go work. Now, it was in a red lot, at $4 or $5 an hour, so it was $70 or $80. So if they parked in a city lot, one of two things happened. The worst case scenario is that they would be $10 on an event parking situation at the parking garage, $10 flat, not an hour. It's the most expensive thing we do. So if they were in a city lot, they would have had 30 minutes free and 50 cents an hour. So for that 8 or 10 hour shift, it would have been $4. So chances are, if it was a significant lift, that was in a lot that we don't control. That being said, we also offer free parking on the top deck of the Jefferson Street garage for that exact idea during certain hours. We do have free parking that may not be right in front of the restaurant, but that is within very comfortable walking distance. We do have those opportunities. As someone who had 50 hospitality employees in downtown, I could tell you it would be very difficult to offer. It's been proposed many times over the years that you would have a pass for downtown city employees. Principally, I wouldn't have any issue with that, other than it's too hard to enforce with the turnover in hospitality and restaurants and all of that. I mean, we would have, in a year, we'd have 50,000 city employees that all have passes downtown, and it would just be very difficult to enforce. So we would be open for those kinds of opportunities, but I'll tell you what's happening now, and that I think is really detrimental to the restaurants and businesses, is a lot of times those employees on a Saturday night are finding a space on Palafox Street that's 2-hour parking that ends at 7 o'clock. And what is the largest complaint we had? We can't find parking on nights and weekends. Well, if I worked at a restaurant on Palafox Street, I can park my car at 6:59 right in front of our restaurant and be there till 2 in the morning. So as Philip mentioned, one of our biggest pain points when people say I can't find parking spaces is that you don't have the turnover for parking spaces, because we're not forcing any turnover. It's not, hey, only be here for as long as you need to be here, not all night long. And so I think as we move forward and we go from 5.6 million interactions with downtown in 2020 to 8.3 in 2023, according to Haas Center, we've seen a 50% increase in 3 years of how many interactions people are having with downtown. Means the parking is less and less available. I'm happy to entertain any of those ideas. Cities do it a lot of different ways. Sometimes there's a shuttle lot. Sometimes there's a lot of different ways to do it. And I would be happy, again, as someone who sympathizes with those folks and have been one of those folks in my life that need to find a parking space. But it would have to be a fair, amicable solution. It couldn't just be parking passes that can then go out into the ether, for years to come. So we'll look at any of those things as we move forward.
This is my last one.
Yeah, go ahead.
And then I know y'all have a
Yeah.
What's your comments and maybe, oh, that looks a little kind of suspicious, kind of weird to me.
Well, first, he doesn't work, Philip doesn't work for premium parking anymore. He just has his own consulting company. So he is, just to be clear, he's not an employee of premium. And as a matter of fact, I've been in this job about a year, and the first time I heard from premium was once I hired Philip. So I don't know what that means, but I would argue really the opposite, he has no direct or indirect loyalty to premium parking. Certainly, we would vet that if he was a current employee of a vendor. But we have absolutely zero concerns about getting objective feedback from him. And I think his experience at premium or anywhere else, I think, is what gave us great insight. And I know Councilman Moore mentioned it yesterday. As a matter of fact, Donald Shoup, who was here in Civicon, considered the czar of parking unanimously across the entire industry. When Philip posted his survey on social media, Donald Shoup shared it and said, "This is the best parking report I've ever seen." And congratulations to Pensacola and Philip. So there isn't, I mentioned on Rick's show today, that would be like LeBron James telling me I'm the best basketball player he's ever seen. That's as good of endorsement as you could ever get on a parking report. So certainly I would stand behind his work based on, frankly, on that endorsement alone.
Just a follow-up on that, is one thing missing from the report is a discussion on transit options downtown. You just mentioned like a shuttle lot.
Yeah.
Is there any thought of providing that type of option?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're a little ways away from that. I would never rule out anything. I'll tell you, I've been part of in my previous life, I was part of helping coordinate and set up a free shuttle service in downtown during the holidays, and that was my project to get done, and we did. I'll tell you, I was shocked by how expensive it was. Just at that time, by the time you get equipment and a licensed driver and all of those things, that is not a cheap lift. One thought in the back of my head, Jim, if we were to ever get to that point, and again, I think we're a long way away from that, is to talk to some of the business owners, and let's find out what their pain points are for their staff, for their, what time are people coming in, when is it hardest to find parking for their staff. Maybe we start to entertain some kind of approach like that when the demand shows it, and we maybe do a public-private partnership with some of the larger employers in downtown that maybe are feeling the most pain, and we say, how do we help each other offset some cost, and provide something like that. So I would never rule that out. But I need to see with our own eyes. I think the city needs to see that the truth is that we actually don't have available spaces. We cannot objectively evaluate that we don't have enough spaces at this point. We charge 50 cents an hour. We have 2-hour free parking on Palafox. We have not put ourselves in a position to say, for example, if you ask me right now, would the city entertain building a solely public structured parking? I would say right now, absolutely not, until we get our house in order. And if we do come to the realization that we don't have enough spaces because we are doing the things correctly, then we would entertain that. Now, a public-private partnership that I mentioned before, that's different if we're talking about hotels needing parking and that becomes some kind of shared situation. But a solely public structure, it would be premature, for example, for us to entertain that until we get an objective evaluation. I think if we implement these things, we'll know in about a year where we stand in terms of what should be available, what should be free. And Philip mentioned, I think there's going to be periods where instead of 50 cents an hour, it's 25 cents an hour. It's not a guarantee that it's going to go up all the time, but we don't have the data right now to support where that needs to happen. And that's why the app change is really important. That's going to really bring us into a new realm of understanding what we need, how we can dynamically price. Because the goal of Donald Shoup always, and Philip mentioned it, is 85% of parking should be full on every lot, which means there should be one parking space open on every block. That's the goal of city parking. And when they're all full all the time, and that's your biggest complaint, it means you aren't charging enough. And when they're all empty all the time, it means you're charging too much. So it's time for us to graduate into a place of a true evaluation about where we stand. And that's why I'm really excited about moving forward with these changes, because we'll get into an area where we can start to react. Do we need structure? Do we need a shuttle? We just don't have enough information to make decisions like that right now.
I guess, can you give us a ballpark estimate of when the change to the new app would happen?
I would shoot for new app alone. Now, I'm not talking about, I don't know on the policy changes. In my mind, I'm shooting for January 1st for a new app. Now, there's things to be done. I don't want that chiseled in stone yet, but that's what I'm shooting for, is a January 1st change to the app. And then there'd be sequence changes to policy, depending on how we want. And those have not, how we sequence what we do. Is it dynamic or is it not? Is it $1? The study says $1.69. We're not going to do $1.69. I mean, as a flat rate. I mean, even though that the market comparatively supports it, that's too much of a jump that I wouldn't put on our users. So what kind of incremental step do we take? When do we expand zones if we do that? When do we expand hours if we do that? I think those things need to be evaluated and sequenced accordingly to make sure that we have the least pain of change, and so all I would commit to from a January standpoint would be we are aggressively moving towards getting an app and getting it onboarded. I hope to have the app agreement done, signed, as soon as reasonable, so we can start marketing. To your point, John, I want as many weeks as possible to get the word out and to have that app come into town and get the word out about the change. So that's, I would say, it's job one for us right now.
Mayor, you mentioned improvements at the airport would include an app for parking. Adding an app to the parking.
Oh, it was pay by phone. There's a pay by phone, yeah.
Not the app.
Right, yeah, not an app change, yeah. That I'm aware of. It's just the pay by phone, the added element of pay by phone.
I got you. And finally here, what's up with Valencia and Inspire? Want an amendment to their
Yes.
lease options?
Yes.
What's up with that? Can you give us a little?
Yeah,
detail
sure.
on that?
Two different situations with both. They're just coming at the same time.
At Community Maritime.
Yes. So you'll see one is parcels 3, 6, and 8. That is Inspire, who already has control of 4 and 5. And my simple recommendation to them, that's really more procedural, which is to try to get their schedule of renewals aligned with their other parcels. So right now, 4 and 5 is at a different time, has a different deadline than 3, 6, and 8. And that didn't make a lot of sense for me. And if I were a developer, I'd kind of want to be looking at it holistically, kind of like parking. We want to say, we control these parcels until this date. So 3, 6, and 8 is simply truing up schedules. Although we've had conversations with them, I expect to hear a proposal first on Lot 5. And we have not heard that formally yet, but I expect that to happen. That is the grass lot to the north of the parking structure. And the general indication would be that would also allow the city to not have, development on Lot 5 would not obligate the city potentially to have to build the structured parking yet until they were to move to Lot 4. So that's one interesting development. That's not in stone either, but there is a way to develop Lot 5 with some parking on site at 5 that would still allow the huge surface lot that's on Lot 4 to remain the parking until we went to Lot 4.
Are they thinking residential on Lot 5?
I'd let them speak to that. I think it's a mix of things, I guess is what I would tell you, but I wouldn't want, that could have changed last week, and I don't want to speak to what the project's going to be. I'll let them do that. But what I can tell you is my expectation is the first thing to my desk will be a proposal for Lot 5. I think it would be mixed use. I think it would be a fair way to put it. That would have, could be housing, could be commercial, could be both. So that's the way I would look at it. As far as 7 at Valencia, my meeting with them was first to gauge, they've had control of the property for quite a while. I wanted to gauge their interest in moving forward. Is this something you still want to do? As I've talked about with you guys many times now, the price of money, the availability of money is a very volatile situation right now. So nothing would surprise me to get a call the next day and say, we can't make it work. So we had initially proposed maybe a 90-day extension to just see if we're serious, because it ended in October. They sent a November payment, a sign of good faith. Certainly, we said we'll continue unless So even though it ended in October, we are continue to proceed forward. I believe the proposal in front of council now is until their counter to us was because of the holidays, it's banks and everything else. If we can get an extension until March 31st, but the expectation is that we move to an agreed term sheet. So in other words, we start to see some substance for 7, or we don't. But that was my objective, is to say, hey, I'm willing to be flexible with time, but I don't want to sit in perpetuity month over month. The agreed upon fees to control this property are very, very low. So it behooves developers to pay a small check every month and not take any action. So I'm encouraged to hear that they're willing to look at that. So the expectation with Valencia is this is an extension of the expired control they have in the lot, but that we are going to see some progression between now and March 31st.
Valencia's still thinking hotel?
They are. Yep, they are. So they think that will be enough time to figure out financing, to figure out that, and so one way or the other, I can't guarantee which direction it will go, but I can guarantee there will be progress by March 31st, one way or the other. Either we would end the agreement, or we would be at a term sheet at that point.
You talked about the crash data and
Yeah.
you mentioned red light cameras.
Mhm.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on what this is?
Yeah, this is conversation that's been around since before I started. I think Deputy Chief Leiter, or I call him Chief Leiter, who was on our transition team, made that a recommendation within the transition report. So that's something that we've been looking into for quite a while, and it's something that certainly we would entertain, and so I wouldn't say we have a specific timetable on that yet, but what we needed to do first and foremost, kind of very similar to parking, what we needed to do is assess the problem, right? Not just say, let's go put some red light cameras up and write tickets. What we're saying is, where are our crashes happening? Where are our injuries and fatalities happening? Where are we spending 5,000 hours well over 5,000 hours with second and third officers? Hundreds of thousands of your taxpayer dollars. Where are we spending? What intersections are we spending those at? So we've got a pretty good idea of where those are at this moment. And we're getting it, and I really appreciate Deputy Chief Chrisman. PPD has spent a lot of time. Their GIS folks, our GIS folks. You guys know how I am. I want to, as much data as I can in terms of making decisions. And we have gotten very, very granular into not even just specific intersections, but specific approaches. East, west, north, south within intersections. Where are we seeing more red lights run? So we were able to get, when we picked, as I said, we'll have data for you coming up next week, but where we picked specific intersections, how did we pick the ones to assess? We looked at 10 years of traffic data and said, where do we have all these crashes happening? So then we go and get even more technology to show in a 16-hour period how many people are running red lights, which was alarming at these intersections. We don't put any warning up that we're testing it. We just do it over a 16-hour period, and that's the data we'll have for you. But what I'm telling you, it was shocking, to say the least, in those intersections, in specific approaches. Again, we may see when there is implementation at some point, we may see that at one intersection it's only north and south, not east and west. Think about Gulf Breeze is a perfect example. They have red light cameras in Gulf Breeze. They don't do it on Daniel Drive in front of Publix. They do it on Highway 98. And so that's how in depth our analysis is becoming, to make sure that our goal isn't we want to have someone have a bad day to write a ticket and write them a ticket. Our goal is we don't want people injured or killed. That's what our goal is, and we don't want to spend 5, 6, 7, 8,000 hours of our police officers' time that could be out investigating crimes, and we're dealing with crashes because we got people slamming through red lights. That's the reality. So we'll be very, again, meticulous. We have been in this approach of how we're going to handle assessing where those are. I would expect certainly a pilot. It's not going to be 50 red lights that we're going to come out and put red light cameras at. We're going to look at a small number of approaches that are the most dangerous for us. But you can guarantee whatever we roll out there is going to be backed by crash data and by being caught red-handed over a day and over a 16-hour period where, we had specific approaches. I'll just tell you that we're approaching 30, 40, 50 red light runs blow through, not red light lefts, not right turn on reds. We got those numbers too, which are even worse. But I'm talking about the light turned red and you blew through it. We have single intersections over one day that are 40, 50 times. And you think about pedestrians, you think about bicyclists, it's alarming, to say the least. So we're going to look at doing something, and we're trying to kind of finalize that. But we'll have that data for you all, and maps and other things we'll have next week.
Mayor, can you give us a hint? What intersection led at the top of the list?
What are the top 3?
Here's what I'll say. In terms of, we've done the 16-hour assessments twice over the last 5 years. I know we just did one, but I think we did another one about 4 or 5 years ago. I can't speak to, because there's so many of those, I don't want to misspeak, but here's what I'll tell you. Over the last 10 years, the same 3 intersections have been either 1, 2, or 3 in total crashes. Okay, so forget the red light data that we have, the more detailed stuff I'll get you because I don't want to misquote it. The 3 worst lights are 9th and Bayou, 9th and Airport, and Fairfield and Davis. Those are the 3 year in, year out most crashes at those 3. So you guys know 9th and Bayou at the Publix and Sacred Heart. The other side of Sacred Heart is 9th and Airport, and then Fairfield and Davis is there right off the interstate, right there at the Fairfield exit. And without fail, those are if one of those deviated into number 4, I don't remember it. It's pretty close. And when you add all of those up, if you just take those 3 intersections and you add all of those up, over 10 years of time, there's 1 wreck every 3 days. Wreck, not run a red light. Wreck every 3 days at those 3 intersections. So, and that's, again, a sample size of 10 years. So those are clearly wide one way, and we're seeing the fruits of that with red lights being run over 9th Avenue. As I said, I want to get you all the specific data in terms of the 16-hour tests. We certainly tested those intersections, and we'll get that data to you.
9th and Chase, is that another one too? 9th and Chase, coming off the interstate and going towards.
If I recall, yes, we definitely tested it both times the last 5 years. I don't remember the numbers offhand, but what I'll tell you is it was higher 5 years. Interestingly, that was a little bit of an outlier. It was much higher 5 years ago on 9th and Chase going eastward to the beach than it was this past time we tested it. Still an issue, but that was one of the weird ones that it's probably a little bit of incomplete data. You'd almost have to go out another time or do it for longer to see. But year in, year out, crashes and running red lights, 9th and Gregory going west, getting on the on-ramp has been a bigger problem for us. I believe next week our plan is we'll be having our press conference at Pensacola State, and we'll be talking in more detail about some of the traffic data and red light cameras, as well as a conversation. They do have a board meeting, but a conversation about a police substation location up on the north side of the city. So we are on at 10 a.m. Correct? Yeah, 10 a.m. Tuesday. It'll be at Pensacola State. Some more details to come. Just a heads up for you guys. But if that's it, guys, I appreciate it. Thank you.